Welcome to Between the Reads, a podcast about Black books. I'm your host, Audra Russell. Welcome to Season 3. We made it to 2022, and there are so many great new things happening this year with the podcast, and I can't do it without your support. So please consider heading over to patreon.com/betweenthereads to join. Are you ready, Booze and Bros? Then sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Whitney Hill is the author of the Shadows of Otherside contemporary fantasy series and the Otherside Heat paranormal romance series. The first two books in the Shadows of Otherside series, Elemental and Eldritch Sparks, are multiple award winners. Whitney is also an SFWA member and the founder of Benu Media, an indie publishing imprint. When she's not writing or consulting, Whitney enjoys hiking in North Carolina's beautiful state parks and playing video games. Whitney, welcome to Between the Reads.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad that you're here with me. And I did say it right. It's Benu Media.
Benu Media, yep.
Benu Media. Okay, Benu Media. Yes, because I remember we talked about the pronunciation before, and I was like, oh, shoot, I can't remember.
No worries. That's on me for picking that name.
Where did that name come from anyway?
It is actually the predecessor to the Phoenix myth. It comes from ancient Egyptian mythology, so it's this idea of rising and shining. The word also has connotations of shining and rising up out of muck. So it's like, let's bring our stories up. Let's have everybody rise and shine.
Right. Okay. So this book, Elemental, you hinted in the back about how it came to be. I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about the inspiration for this book.
Yeah, so I have been a contemporary fantasy fan for years, and growing up, never saw books with characters like me on the cover. And I was writing, I think all of these writers have this story of like, oh, I've been writing since I was a child. Like, yes, okay, that's also me. I stopped for a long time until I came to, a really rough patch in my life and came back to writing through that. And Elemental was really, in a way, processing kind of some of the stuff that had gone on and processing that story, but then also looking at how do we write a story of a strong Black woman, a strong magical woman, not with those stereotypical tropes, not as the sidekick, but somebody who's owning her story. And it did actually take me quite a while to find that story because I guess the first draft wasn't really, there wasn't any agency. Things were just happening to her. So it was like this reflection of what I felt like was going on. So I couldn't really get the ideas together until I moved to North Carolina and found my setting in the kind of interesting arrangement of this kind of Tri-City area.
We're going to talk about that too. So why don't you tell our readers what Elemental is all about?
Yeah, so I mean, at its base, it's a story of a private investigator in an elemental who she has been kind of kept under the thumb of the local supernatural mob boss. And she's getting tired of it. So, you can't just break out, when everybody is like holding you in this box. So she's going on this kind of case and trying to gather the information she needs to free herself. And along the way, she's discovering more of her own power, more of her own magic. And not only what she can do for herself, but maybe what she can do for the community.
Now, this world that you created, my God, you have elementals, you have wares, you have the djinn, you have elves, and they all have their own powers. And we know that, I guess this wouldn't be giving it away, but elementals are the most powerful of everyone. That's the only thing I will say. How did you come up with all the aspects of this world?
That is a blend of, knowing my genre. So, like I said, I've been reading contemporary fantasy for years and years and years. But then it's also wanting to bring in fresh elements, new elements. I'm a huge fan of world mythology, so I have like books and books about like all of these myths and legends from around the world. So it's like, how do we move beyond, the staples or maybe the European focused things and bring in a few elements that, come from other cultures. And as the series continues, we bring in more and more kind of different magical beings. And yeah, some of it is just wanting to throw my own spin on things. I think as people get into book 2, they'll find some things about the elves that is not typically in elven lore. So it's just, letting my imagination run.
Well, you let it run well because I loved Arden's power and the way that she said that, she had to find when she cast her air and she had to find the tendrils, the strings that held the spells of the elves and her, just everything. And I'm not even articulating it well, but it's just so neat. Like when they would when the Aether, am I saying that right? That when
Ether,
they would the ether when they would send out their little tendrils and break through her wall, and she would have to find the strings to kind of break their spells. I mean, it's just it's such a great world, and the way that you wrote it, you can really you can see the things happening as they're happening. And that's when I know, I've said this before on my show, that's when I know a book has me. When it's going through my head as a movie and then I have to press pause because somebody has interrupted me while I'm reading and I get mad, that's when I know the book is good.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and it's fun because like that's how I see the book when I'm writing. It's like, okay, if this was on a screen, what is the focus of the camera? What would the special effects look like? What would, because I would love to see this made into a Netflix show or a movie or something. So
Absolutely.
it's like, what does that look like translating that in-head movie to the page?
Absolutely. I would love to see this as a Netflix movie, but it has to be done
Thank you.
right. Actually, I want to see it as a movie first and then turn into a TV series. That's what I need. I need both.
I like that. I could take that.
Because I need to see it on a big screen first, especially some of the fight scenes when we're getting towards the end and the battles. I'm like, oh, yeah, I need to see that on the big screen. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, and they only get bigger as the series goes on.
Are you kidding me?
Nope.
When I was reading that one, I was like, I don't know what is going to happen in the rest of these books. But this one was a humdinger. And if it only gets bigger, oh my goodness. Now, Arden, the main character. I love me some Arden. She is
Cute.
wonderful. Now, I'm going to press a little bit, and if it's too much, you tell me so. But you poured a lot into her. And based on what I read in the back of the book, it's kind of like you said, you were writing through some things, and it really poured into Arden in a very touching and real way. So I just want you to share Arden with us a little bit, the character.
Arden is somebody who was as lost as I was at the time that I wrote her. She's someone who's feeling boxed in, beat down, out of choices. And like I said, that's where I was in my life when I was writing. It's a thing I do. Some people journal. Some people go to therapy. I write books. And it's obviously it's different enough from my life that it's not a self-insert, but I do draw on, some of the things that I'm feeling or working through. Because for me, that creates not only an authentic story, but one that other people can relate to. And I've been so grateful to hear, feedback and responses from people who are saying, I love this character because I get where she's coming from.
Yeah, I loved her too because, and I'm trying to comment without blowing through like half of the rest of the questions I have coming. But I love her too because she's so, there's a power in her that's being kept from her by other people who are telling her who she should be and how she should move in life. And I can relate to that too because, growing up, you have parents, and your parents, they have visions that they have for you. And when what you want to do doesn't align with their vision, there can be conflict. And you can choose one of two paths. You can choose their path and do what they want, and they're happy. And you can put on a smiling face, but you're just, dying inside. Or you can choose your path, but your path, it comes with a fight. Some internal, some external. And that's what I love about Arden, is that she's through this whole book, she's arguing with herself. She's trying to figure out who she is. She's tired of being used. She's tired of people hiding things from her, people that are supposed to be the people that are her support system. And she's fighting through this whole book for her agency. And I really love that about her.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's, for me, it's not so much my parents. My parents, I've been blessed to have, such a supportive family, and they're saying, like, whatever you're going to do with your life, just do it well, and make sure that you're happy. But I think a lot of us have had those situations where somebody is telling us who we can be and where we can go and how we can act there, what we're allowed to do with our own personal strengths. For me, it's quite frequently been in the workplace, where, I might be the only person looking like me in the room, and everybody's got an opinion about, how I'm allowed to be in that space. So, like I said, I do try to, like, channel some of that constructively and see how it relates to other people.
And I kind of stepped on my next question, because I was going to say that the theme in this book it seems to be people fighting for agency. Everyone is. It's not just Arden. It's Troy, it's Roman, and I love Roman. He's my favorite character. Like, if you do anything to Roman in the rest of these books, we are going to fight. See? Oh my gosh. You better not have done anything to him in these books, because I love Roman. I need him to stay.
Yeah. I'm laughing. He stays. He doesn't die.
Okay. I guess I'm
laughing because this is an evolution that I've seen 90% of the time. I'll let you decide what happens, how you feel about that.
Oh boy. Okay. But yeah, we have everybody in the book is fighting for some kind of agency. So, and I know what we just talked about it a little bit, but I want you to expand on that, because it really is the theme of this book. Everybody's fighting for that. So why was it important to have that be the theme in this book? Did you know that was going to be the theme of this book? Or did that just kind of, when you read it, you were like, oh, damn, everybody's...
No, part of that, I wouldn't say it was necessarily planned as a theme. It came out of trying to make sure that all of the secondary characters were as well-rounded as Arden was.
Okay.
That's a frustration for me when I'm reading, is like, you've got this one main character and it's all about them, and the secondary characters are quite frankly boring. So it's like, what's even happening in this scene, because this character is so flat and one-dimensional. So I have an exercise where I go through, and like the 5 secondary characters, they all get their own planning. What are they doing? What's their motivation? Who hurt them? What are they carrying around? How do those relationships evolve with the other characters? And I think, for me at least, like as I'm writing, it's more interesting that way, because it adds like a level of depth that I have to think about as I'm saying, like, okay, so-and-so is reacting like this because... So yeah, in the end, they all have their own agency.
So you write character sketches beforehand and then make sure that your characters move within those frameworks?
I write the character sketches beforehand. I have some idea of who they are. I am one of those writers who the characters take control of them.
Yay!
Like, they're people living in my head. They're telling me what they want to do. And this is the thing I do with every book. I'll plot, the major plot points.
Uh-huh.
I'll get 25 to 40% of the way in, and character goes, no. Throughout the whole outline, we're free writing. We're free writing. Every
Like,
book.
we're not doing this. That's not
We're
that.
not
That's
doing
not
it.
what's happening here.
Is that what I
Don't you
want?
love that? Don't you love that? When I
I
wrote my
do.
book, I
I
had like a
do.
whole half of this book written, and this character had the audacity to come in my dreams. And she was like, first of all, that's not my name. And second of
Ooh.
all, no, this is not what we're doing here. And I was like, okay, well,
Mhm.
I have got to go back then and change her name and make sure I went through and change her name everywhere. You know how much of a pain that is? She came back to me in another dream.
Uh-huh.
She was like, it's as simple as find and replace in Word. Don't play me. This is not my name.
I
Characters
did
are
that
rude
with.
sometimes.
No, they are. They really are. I had to do the whole name change thing with Troy and Evangeline twice. And the last change came through like
Really?
the day that I got like the manuscript formatted and ready to upload. I was like, nope, that's not their name. That's not their name.
So what were can I know what were their names before they were Troy and
Yeah.
Evangeline?
What was they were Tyr and Freya.
Huh.
Because I had some mythological tie-ins there. And then I said,
Uh-huh.
hang on a minute. Neither of these characters is Scandinavian or Norse. There's no reason to pull in Norse mythology for them. And
Uh-huh.
then the whole thing of the gods playing a role, by the end of the
Mhm.
story. We can't have two
Mhm.
characters named after gods, but then also separately gods. So there was
Mhm.
like this whole like, wait a minute.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can just tell the detail in this book. Everything is just it's so well thought out.
Thank you.
It's I mean, it's detailed, but it's not like detailed like, "Oh my god, there's just way too much exposition." It's detailed in that you can tell that care was put into every character, into every scene. The way that you moved them through their worlds, it all made sense. And I
Thank
just
you.
like I said, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan. I've got to read the rest of the books.
Thank you.
I have to read the rest of the
Appreciate that.
books.
Thank you.
So, who was your favorite character to write out of everybody in the book?
Ooh, it's a toss up between Arden and Troy
Okay.
because Arden obviously was the vehicle of processing,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
then Troy was part of the reason that the story came about to begin with, and that'll be clearer as you read on. But he just ended up being a much more complicated character than I had originally envisioned.
Uh-huh.
At first, when he first came to me, he was just this very kind of simplistic, grouchy type. And just the more that I work with him, the more he's like, no, 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 there's actually also this. So it's like, okay. So yeah, just discovering that characters are more complex than I had originally thought is always exciting.
I feel like where okay, so where did Troy come from? Were you walking in the wood? Because listen, I'm telling you, I pay attention to your Instagram page, okay, and I see the parallels. I know Arden is you, and she's another form of you, but Arden is you. Okay, so where did Troy come from? Were you walking and because now I'm thinking that Troy was the beginning of the story and not Arden. So were you walking in the woods? Were you taking a shower? Where were you when Troy came to be, and what made you say, "Okay, I need to turn this into a book"?
I was trying to fall asleep, actually. So a lot of the stories are because I can't sleep. And I'm like,
Okay.
okay, let's make up a story. Let's make up a story. And something happens. And
Mhm.
the drowning scene was actually the first thing that came to me for that book.
Really?
Yeah. So I was like, okay, how did they get there and had to back all the way up? But he and I'm like, how much can I say without spoiling what happens later in the series?
Probably not a lot.
Not really a lot. Let's just say he is the result of learning several things the hard way.
Mhm. Okay. So I'm making the comparison here because my brain is always thinking through things. I don't know if that's because I'm a writer.
Hmm.
I don't know if that's just because I've been a reader all of my life and I always like to think about the story behind the story. So I'm going to
Hmm.
surmise that Troy is all of the difficulty that was in your life at that time and it manifested into this person. And obviously Arden is some form of you, like you said, because writing is your therapy. So it's you against these problems that you had to figure out. And
We
that's why
will
Troy's ass was so difficult in this book.
we will see again what you think as we go on. I will say that I never planned Elemental to be a single book. It was never planned to be standalone. It was
Okay.
written intended to be part of a 5 book arc.
Okay.
So the people as you see them, as you think they are in book 1, is not who they're going to be by book 5.
Lord, you mean I have
She's like,
more surprises?
Roman! Oh no, I've had
Really?
people yell at me. I've had people
Oh,
yell
well,
at me.
then
Why did you?
listen, I can deal with anything as long as you don't hurt Roman. I'm telling you. Roman
He's
is my
not hurt.
favorite. I don't like the sound of that, Whitney.
He survives. I mean,
Survives, which means he's going through some. If you hurt my baby, I'm telling you.
every every single one of them goes through something. Every single one of them. So whoever the favorite character is, some people really love Maria, some people really love Troy, some people really love Arden. Everybody's going through something.
Okay, first of all, I don't like Maria. I definitely don't like. Callista can kiss my ass. I can't stand her. And I'm still trying to figure out what you're going to do with her because I can't even say anything. Callista is Callista, and she's got a lot of
Uh-huh.
power. And I'm mad at her for her blocking Arden, and that's all I'm gonna say. I don't like Callista.
She was originally a much less malevolent character. The first draft, she was just kind of there. She was kind of like a boss. I needed another villain. I needed somebody to really be the driver behind. Like, okay, Arden wants out, but why? Her boss isn't that bad. So we did some work on Callista.
Uh huh. You really didn't need any more villain. I mean, you have enough with the elves and everything that they're doing. I mean, damn. You really didn't need to work Callista like that. You could have left Callista alone. I mean, it makes the book better, obviously, but you could have left Callista alone. She gets on my damn nerves. Every time she came up on the page, I was like,
Here
and
she
I don't
goes.
like, yeah, exactly, her, and then Grim and Duke. Oh, and this is what I want to ask you too. That is not on my cards. So, yeah, you can tell this book worked me up. Okay, so Nebuchadnezzar. She says his name. Now everybody call his nickname, I guess, is Duke. And in the book, several times you alluded to the fact that when you call his name, it can be used for like. Okay, I want you to explain that a little bit. Like, does his name hold power when you call him? Can you command him to do as you wish? I mean, what is going on there?
Yeah, so in several cultures and several myths, names have power. In ancient Egypt, you wouldn't write down anything that you didn't actually want to come to pass, or if you did, draw enemies or demons or whatever, you made them small and you made them conquered. So thinking about how words have power, names have power, the true name of an individual has power. And with Jin, adapting those myths, it was like, okay, if this is the, Jinny in a lamp, how do we summon them when there's no lamps? How do we summon them when, they're off in some other realm doing Jin things?
Okay.
So yeah, if you use, the true name, the summoning name, you can bring them to you and make your request. That will get dug into a bit more later as well.
Okay. All right. I'm going to get back on track to my questions. So, who did you despise in this book? Like,
did
who
I
was the character you
despise?
hated?
Kethia, the High Queen. Yeah.
Yeah. She
Because she
came
was
in
just
at.
that, like, the animus of somebody who has absolutely no interest in you, in your humanity, in seeing you as a person. She has her view, and you don't exist, except as a tool to be used or, something to be crushed. And that attitude pisses me off.
And yet you wrote
So
Callista, because Callista's the same damn way.
Callista, for me, is not as bad because she will at least see that you're a human. Or a person. She'll acknowledge you. Kathia just flat out dehumanizes. She refers to Arden as it rather than
Yeah.
her. So it's
And the
like
way
these
she just
small
flicked her
nuances.
hand, I won't say what she did, but the way she just flicked her hand and what
Yeah,
resulted from that, I was just
yeah,
like, wow, she's heartless.
yeah. It's like what do you do when you have absolute power and no restraint and no goodness in your heart to, you know, to lever on that. I do I do like to have nuanced villains, but some people are just bad. Some people are just evil, and Calista and Kathy are two of them.
Right. Yeah. Especially Kathy. And she just had, like, she's mentioned throughout the book, but you don't see her until right up at the end. And then, I mean, but her performance in that small part of the book was just, she was cold and calculating and just like you said, heartless. And I was just like, well, damn, you
Oh,
know?
she gets worse. I'm just saying, it gets worse. Everything gets
Okay.
bigger, everything gets more intense. Like with every book, I'm saying, how do I do more? What more of whatever it is? How do I do more emotional impact? How do I do more, pulling through these themes? How do I do more characterization? Because there needs to be a reason for somebody to keep reading that series. If it's just same, 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 that's not interesting for me even to write. So it's like, how are we raising the bar with every single book?
Well, I'm kind of scared to read the rest because you did so much with this one. And Kathia was already like just like the core of evil at in the short amount of time that she had in this book. You let her free for a longer amount of time. I'm really scared what she's gonna do.
Yeah, she does some evil shit.
Wow, Whitney.
Sorry.
Okay. See, this is what you're one of those writers that gets off on, like making the reader just like, what did you do?
Yeah. Oh no, it's one of my favorite things that like the arc readers, the beta readers, I'll get comments in the margins like, "Why have you done this? You're making me cry. I couldn't put the book down. I had to find out." And I was like, "Okay, well, I've succeeded."
Just your face just now. You're like, okay, well, that's my job. I did it
It is
right.
literally my. It's like, as a writer, like it's my job to not only immerse you in the world, like visually, but also to make you feel something, to connect with you. And that for me is just the greatest compliment when somebody says like, "You made them feel something."
Yeah, well, I felt a whole lot of somethings in this book. Like, I mean, oh, I can't even comment on all the somethings that I felt because they're all tied to key moments that I don't want to ruin for people. Like, you have to go and watch and read this thing, and then we can talk. And then we can talk. I will say that I don't like how you had him show up again at the end after she relaxed and was chilling in her life. And then he's just there, like Humphrey Bogart under a streetlight, calling to her like, really?
Uh
Really?
huh.
don't know about you, Whitney. I don't know. So why was it important for you to put this book in North Carolina? I know you love it. You said it's like your adopted home, but why put the setting there?
I really enjoy being able to research settings firsthand. And this one, I mean, like you said, you've seen my Instagram. I'm always out in the woods. There's some great, indie businesses, indie bookstores. There's some great just restaurants, and the local culture here is so vibrant that it made it really easy to pull into a world. And, say, oh, I loved that bar. Let me think of like how I can, represent something similar, or just the way that the area is set up. There's this really good balance between like these cities, but then also these wild areas where you could potentially have, supernatural creatures. Like I was out hiking at the quarry, and it's like this really deep quarry, and I read this story about how somebody went under and never came up, and I was like, okay, first that's sad, but then second, what if there's a monster inside the quarry? So there's like just so much about the area that makes it really easy to have these like what if.
Because I was looking, because I was like, Eno State Park. I was like, let me look this up. Okay, yeah, that's a real park. Okay. Because I'm thinking back to your posts, and I'm like, this has got to be something that's part of her like real world.
Yeah, no, and like somebody sent me a message saying, okay, I looked and there is actually, homes next to this park. And I said, yeah, I drive by it. Like, I'm trying to make this as real as possible for people. Like, if you want to go Google map it, then I promise you it's there.
So you said you have businesses and things in the book. So is it pronounced, because I don't know wine, the club, is it Claret or Claret?
It's Claret, yeah.
Claret,
that's not a real business. So the names have been changed for everything except one place in book 3.
But was Claret similar to someplace there?
It is similar, yeah. It is similar to someplace in Raleigh. It's inspired by, yeah.
Okay. Are you going to tell us?
So I'm like, I don't know if these small businesses want this kind of
I got
placement. Some of them might, some of them might not.
Right. Okay. I mean, personally, I would think that would, create tourist, attractions. That's just me.
I do want to put together like Arden's Guide to the Triangle, so we can have like, okay, if you liked this setting, here's the, the real life version.
Yeah, because I have a little bit of, my parents used to live in King, which is like right outside of Winston-Salem. They lived there for like 10 or 12 years. And I lived in Greensboro for about 2 years, which I know that's like a little ways away. But, North Carolina is just, but North Carolina is really pretty. I mean, so I can see why you'd want to, set it there. Yeah. So, okay. So you touched on issues of supremacy in this book with the red caps. And from what I read, the red caps is part of another type of lore. They're like these evil little droll thingies that dip their hats in people's blood. Okay. But before I looked it up, I was like, red caps. She's talking about MAGA people. Like,
So the idea for the book actually came to me in January 2016. So I had just come back from Europe at that point. I wasn't, I don't recall seeing, the hats that we're thinking of at that time. And it was entirely based on this myth, which would, I adapted it for the story. But it was not lost on me later on that I was like,
red caps. That's what I thought. I was like, it's red. But then I was like, wait a minute, let me look it up, because she's got so much mythology and stuff in here that it may not be, but it's a nice comparison. I mean, it's a good.
It was, it was definitely an accidental comparison, because like I said, that was in the idea from before I recall there being the whole thing about those hats. But, symbolism is in a lot of ways kind of culturally shared. So it's like...
Absolutely.
It spreads beyond,
And maybe it's no coincidence that those hats are red from them people that like to wear them. I'm just saying.
You know?
Just saying. Could be me overthinking it. I don't know.
Could be. Could be.
So back to this point, everyone in the book seems to be other to the other people, you know, jinns, elves, whatever. Everyone is other to someone else. And there's that whole issue of supremacy. Why was it important to include this in the book?
I don't want to say can't escape or get away from, but I can't ignore the responsibility that authors have to consider the messages and things that they're putting in their books. And, you know, social justice themes are something that pop up repeatedly in my life. You know, I mentioned how for me the framing was a lot about the workplace. You know, it's always me in workplaces saying, hey, maybe we don't want to say that because it's racist, it's sexist, it's something that, you know, is just harmful to somebody. So it's a thing that I was like, you know, how are we going to tell a story that does connect like that to the real world and not beat people over the head with this, you know, with social justice themes or whatever, but really help to position it, and in so doing, I don't know if elevate is the right word, but freshen up the urban fantasy genre, because a lot of times we see fantasy dealing with these things in allegory. I don't want to do that. I want to say, like, no, you are, you know, a black person who is also supernatural. You don't just separate, I am supernatural but not black. You are moving through the world as a black person. So how do we reflect the reality of that? And then what does supremacy look like when it's multi-layered? So just trying to pull all of that together.
It's like that double consciousness that Du Bois talked about in his book, you know, because you're struggling to fit into both of these worlds, and you're part of both of these worlds, but at the same time, there are parts of both of these worlds that either you don't like or that don't like you, and trying to find that balance in there, you know.
And trying to find your place, trying to find what's yours for yourself, not just what other people have said, you know, you can have this. Who are we and what are we doing when we're stepping into our full strength?
And then where is that space that we fit in? Because that's what Arden was searching for through this whole thing, was that she just needed that space where she could be totally her and be a black woman and be an elemental and be free to be both without being judged for either. And for her, mostly because she was elemental, because it's a big thing to be what she was.
And it's not just like finding a place, it's also having the courage to create a place. Because not everyone is just going to slide down and make a seat for you at the table. It's that whole thing of like, do I pull up a chair? Do I need to make my own table? So that was a question that I'm kind of like, I'm still wrestling with it. I started writing book 7 now. And just, again, going bigger. How are we, how are we going to keep asking these questions like bigger ways?
Now, she was an elemental, but she was a sylph. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's based, the idea of the elementals is based on the 4 classical elements. Sylph, you know, being air, and then we've also got fire, water, and earth. And just exploring, like, what does magic look like when, you know, there's not just kind of the etheric, like, kind of typical magic, but also magic that draws on specific elements. So at this time, she's handling air and, you know, can't touch the other elements.
And I think it's kind of cool how there are natural elements that cancel their powers. So for her, it's bronze. You know,
for all elementals, it's bronze.
It's for bronze. I thought, like I said, this is just so well researched. And side note, I knew you were studying that tool making. I was like, this has got to be in the book somewhere, and there it was. I knew it. Now I have to ask. Yes. So were you into blacksmithing and put it in the book, or did you get into it and go take the class because of the book?
So I've always liked, figuring out like magical properties of this or that. Blacksmithing started in December, so that's a very recent thing. And that
Okay.
was literally just a friend saying like, hey, I do this thing. Do you want to come with me? And I'm like,
Wow.
never done blacksmithing. Didn't know that we could do it.
Right, right.
But that is a thing that I absolutely love.
Yeah, I think it kind of stays in the back of my mind because when I went to the African American Museum in DC, they had very ornate pieces of wrought iron, and apparently, and there were enslaved people who were very, very, very skilled at at doing that, and I just always was like, huh, you never. I mean, I knew we worked with wood, and we were cooks, obviously, and we were agriculturalists, but blacksmithing never crossed my mind until I saw
Oh
that,
yeah.
in the museum. So that's always been something that has, interested me. But me and hot things don't mix, so I just watch from afar. My husband
Oh
would
yeah. You
probably
have
be
like
like,
sparks.
no. Yeah, the sparks flying and, hammers and hands and, I'm kind of clumsy. No, I'll just watch. I'll live vicariously through you. So you could just put some more posts up.
Next month.
Okay. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. Now, we've mentioned that Elemental is part of a series. It's called Shadows of Otherside. Now, you originally said it's 5 books, but now you mentioned 7. So there's 7 so far with more to come.
So it was originally planned as a 5-book series, and I was gonna stop. And then I found I couldn't quite leave Otherside, so I shifted and wrote a paranormal romance trilogy set in the same world. And then I finished that, and it was like all of the characters from the main series were like, "Hi," like they weren't ready to go, and I missed my friends. So I was like, "What if we wrote another cycle of 5 books?" And then I went, "What if we wrote 2 more cycles of 5 books?" So there's definitely going to be
Really?
at least 5 more books. Because now that I've like kind of figured out what the arc is, I'm like planning those out. So yeah, book 6 is written, and with my editor, book 7 is it almost done.
So, what evil things have you planned? Give us a hint of what is in the rest of
Evil
these books
thing.
coming.
So the first series is very much focused within the triangle, just very local. The second cycle takes us outside the triangle.
Okay.
We're dealing with more like higher levels of government. We're dealing with more dangerous people. We're dealing with more dangerous people, like greater numbers of them. And Arden has decided who she is by the end of, book 5, and she has some idea of her place, and she's claimed what's hers. But now there's a whole new world of people who want to question that and who want to do something about it. So,
Oh boy. I can just see I don't know whether to read the rest of the books I have on my Kindle right now or whether I just want to wait until they're all out because I'm going to need to know what happens with each one.
well, and that's the thing, like because they're planned in these cycles of 5, each one is self-contained. You could just read those 5 and be happily finished at the end of it.
You don't
Like
know
I
me
said, I
very
just couldn't.
well.
Well, there'll be 4 books out in 2023. What year are we now? Yeah. So,
Wow. You are just really we'll get to that. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. So, I'm trying not to jump ahead. I have certain questions I want to ask. If I talk on that now, then I'm gonna be like, okay, I don't have any more questions now. So, you told us about your spinoff, so I'll jump over that question. Now, are you Team Roman or Team Troy?
if I tell you, it's going to give something away.
Really?
I'll tell you if you want to know.
I mean, how's it going to give away if you just tell me which one you are? I mean, did you write the rest of the books based on what team you're on? Did you bend the arc to one or the... You did? Okay, then don't tell me. Because if you don't say team Roman, then we gonna fight right on this podcast. I'm coming through the cameras. And I can tell you probably are Team Troy just because you didn't want to answer. And the look in your eye.
I'm like, how do I not ruin things for people who don't want things ruined?
Lord, okay. So you are self-published.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us your reasoning behind that.
Yeah, so I did actually query for 8 months, at the end of 2019, early 2020, and I am not good at waiting.
Right.
That whole process is I have all the respect in the world for the authors who can go through that process. I am not one of them. And at the same time that I was going through that, the whole send off a query and wait for a response and do this and do that. We had the Romance Writers of America meltdown over, some racism. We had the American Dirt meltdown. We had the Barnes & Noble blackface situation with the covers where they, rather than promoting books by black authors in February, they just put a black Frankenstein on it. So there were all these kind of things that were going on. And I was like, do I want to be involved in this, like, in this way at this time? And I was like, no, because, also at the same time, we're seeing Publishing Paid Me come up and just a whole bunch of things where we're discovering that not only has it been, historically more difficult for people of color and especially black people to come into the publishing industry. We're getting paid less. We're dealing with more racism. And that was just not something that I had room for in my life at that time. And I said, you know what? If the feedback I'm getting from agents and from acquiring editors is, this is a very well-written story, it's just not for me. Well, I've been told it's a well-written story by people in the industry. Let me see what I can do with it myself. Let me choose myself rather than waiting to be chosen.
Absolutely. And when was Elemental published?
June 23rd, 2020.
And we are in 2022. And you have 5 books out? 6 books?
I've got 5 books and a novella, and 3 more done and coming out this year.
And you have won multiple awards. That's pretty badass for having only been published for 2 years.
Thank you.
Tell us the process. I mean, how did you go about winning all these awards? Did you submit your book yourself to contests? Did people find your book and say this needs to, be a contender? What happened?
The vast majority of those are I submitted. So Writer's Digest, 8th Annual Self-Published eBook Awards, submitted to that. Reader's Favorite, Indie Books, Indie Book Awards, Next Generation Indie Book Awards. All of those are things that you submit to. There's a fee involved, but then, if you come out high enough, then you win a prize back. A few were, shortlisted in North Carolina Sci-Fi and Fantasy. I didn't even know that was happening until somebody reached out and said, hey, congratulations. Wow. And I'm like, oh, there's some really great authors on that list. So it is mostly just being my own publicist.
So there's a lot of work involved.
Yes.
And I'm saying that for the writer hopefuls out there who want to go the self-publishing route. Writing the book is really the easy part. The work comes after it's published, and I am just in awe of you and how do you find the time to write, because you you still work a full-time job and you have your
I
own
do.
publishing company. So how do you find the
I do.
time to write all of these books?
It's ruthless prioritization. And part of it is that, you know, I don't have other responsibilities. I don't have a family to take care of. I don't have, you know, other things going on in my life. Blessed to be in good health. So there's that in itself provides a level of opportunity and privilege that I'm able to take advantage of. But the other half of it is I've said I am an author. I am not a digital marketer who also writes. I am an author. This is my job. And I have, you know, dedicated blocks of time. Every day we sit down for, I try to do 75 minutes. Some days I'm tired and it's 30. But every day we're sitting down, we're working on something. It ends up being, you know, 40 hours for day job and then maybe another 10, 15, 20 for publishing. So it's like just deciding that this is what I want to be, this is what I want to do, and this is important to me. And then, like I said, being able to use my resources, my education, my past experience to get it done.
Now, I would say what's next for you in the writing world, but we know it's the whole Otherside series. You're continuing that.
It's Otherside. I've got a historical fantasy that's finished. I need to figure out what to do with. I've got, I think it's going to end up being a fantasy romance. There's a whole Trello board of things to write.
I need to see a picture of your office at home on Instagram. Do you have like a whiteboard with all these ideas on it or what?
It's a Trello board, yeah. So it's like an online pin board.
Okay.
Where I just like, if I have an idea, it goes there. Because that's the other thing that I think that trips up a lot of writers is they have all these ideas and they jump here and jump here. The idea goes on a Trello board. We put as much detail as we have, and then we stay focused. This thing has to go, and it's hard for me. I have ADHD, so like I want to do all the things, and I'm always having these really shiny ideas. But it's like we got to stay focused.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, you're doing a hell of a job. I mean, all these books, all these awards, you know, it's just, it's amazing. So now Trello board you said it's online. Is there a website? What's the website?
Yeah, Trello.com, Trello.com.
Okay.
And you can set it up all different kinds of ways. Like I've got one board that is just genres across the top and ideas down in a column. And then, you know, like for organizing blog posts or things, it's kind of set up like a web developer. It's like backlog, queued, doing, in review, done. So like setting up this process, having a visual way to track what's going on.
I might have to check that out because I have right now 4 different blogs that I write for, and I just have like my Word document. I'm like, okay, do this one, do this one, do this one, and I keep falling behind. And I'm not even going to talk about my author, you know, stuff. I haven't done anything. I haven't written since I wrote Bloodland, and because I've learned that I'm a seasonal writer. I can't write every day. I have to write because I tried and I would do it and it would be trash. I'm the kind of writer like an idea comes to me and then it like fleshes out and then I sit down to write. So
well, and
that's me.
That's the important thing to say about writing every day is that it's not for everybody. And you see these like writing tips, writing advice, write every day. And it's like, I've found a way to make it work for me. I don't recommend it for everybody. And I will take breaks myself, like, you know, take a day or two off from writing because at some point you've been doing it so much that you hit a wall and you're like, I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what's working. I'm just hitting this wall. And taking the step away is actually what gets it moving forward again.
Yeah, because I wrote every day when I first went all in I want to say it was 2017. I wrote every day from 4 a.m. to 9 a.m. And a lot of days I didn't even know what I was going to write, but I would sit down and I would write. And some days it was an article I read that sparked a short story. And then I joined a short story group and wrote a short story every week. They gave us a prompt. They gave us a word count. And the short story is I learned how to mastered them pretty well. But like I said, it wasn't until I stopped and took a break that's when the idea for Bloodland came to me, when I was out and about just kind of living life. But then after I did that, I had to realize, it's like you said, it works for some people, it doesn't work for some people. I wrote every day for 3 years and one book came out of that. So it's just interesting to hear, how different writers, move through this world. Some people write every day. Some people write when the mood hits them. Like Toni Morrison, I was watching a documentary that she has, and she said that, she's a morning writer, and she said, I'm smart in the morning, and in the afternoon, she's like, don't ask me to write anything because it's not going to work. She was like, I'm brilliant in the morning, but in the afternoon, no. So, and that's kind of me.
Yeah. And like, that's the important thing as well, is learn what works for you in writing.
Right.
So like, I'm good first thing in the morning or middle of the night. And I just learned to schedule myself at the time when I know I'm going to be able to think. There's some people who are like, I write 10,000 words a day. And I'm like, okay, I write 1,000 to 2,000, but the story still gets done.
Right.
So, not worrying about what is everybody else doing, but just thinking what works for me.
Absolutely. Yep. Well, you found what works for you clearly. I mean, all the books, all the awards. The book is just, so well written. And, honestly, I'm about to hop off and go start book 2 because I need to see what Kathia, how you pronounce her name? Kathia? Kathia. I need to see what this little witch is going to be doing. Because I know it's not good, whatever it is.
It's not good. It's not good in that one. I think I think it gets worse.
I was going to say, what do you mean you think? You wrote it. You know whether it's going to get good or not.
Well, it's that funny thing that happens, like, you write a book and the minute it's done, it's gone. I had to go and reread it because I was like, okay, wait, we're going to talk about my book. I have to be able to talk about my book. I went and reread it. I was like, oh, okay, that's what happened.
Just write like a synopsis for each book that'll jar your memory. Like, okay, yeah. Yeah, that's what happened.
Elemental was 11 books ago now.
Wow.
There's...
Wow, that's a lot. I take my hat off to you, ma'am.
Thank you.
So where can readers find all 11 of your books?
They are available for ebook and paperback at all major retailers as well as indies. Or they can stop by my website, which is whitneyhillwrites.com, and there's a store there, or there's links to find whatever they want.
Okay, and where can we find you on social media?
I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Write, so WRITE _ wherever. I have a Facebook page. I don't update it. I'm trying. It's one of those things where I'm like, let me manage how much I'm doing by getting rid of this thing that I actually hate doing.
Right.
I like Twitter. I like Instagram. I do not like Facebook.
Right. Yeah. Listen, with me, I used to be on Facebook all the time, and then I started my podcast, and now I'm heavily on Instagram, and Facebook just gets no love from me. Other than on Tuesdays when I post my episodes, that's it.
There you go. And, we love to see what you're doing on Instagram. You've got all these great posts. You've got all these great guests. So it's lovely to see.
Well, thank you. I try. I'm working on it. Well, we have come to the end of our show. I want to thank you so much for sharing your time and your talents with us today. Brilliant author.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved our conversation, and it's such an honor to be here because, like I said, you're doing so much for the Black Indie author community on Instagram and elsewhere that it's just truly great to be here. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. See, this is why I love you. And my quote today, you guys, as you know, at the end of every show, I do a quote. Today, it's an anonymous quote. And it says very simply, above all, be true to yourself. And if you cannot put your heart into it, take yourself out of it. Until next time, y'all, you know what to do. Grab a book and read, and I'm out. Thanks for lending me your ear today. If you enjoyed this content, please head over to betweenthereads.com and leave a rating for the show. While you're there, consider supporting this independent podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/betweenthereads. Join us next week for another great episode.